and so then I got to sit in the editing room and translate back to write the subtitles in English. And sometimes they changed. You'd think it would be the same lines that I wrote in English, but sometimes the actors did somewhat different lines, and sometimes I liked the lines they came up with better than what I had written. And because the director of that, Mark Forster, is a friend of mine, I was able to give a couple of notes that were taken. But for the most part, as a writer, you only have influence as far as you can be persuasive. You don't have any real power over editing. And it's usually, if a director is an established director and a so-called final cut director, then yeah, the edit is completely up to him. For many directors, though, they don't have that total power. So it might be a producer. If it's a very powerful producer, it might be the studio. It could be who gets to determine what the final cut looks like. And the writer gets very little say. Yeah.
Excuse me, David, we probably have time for one more question.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to answer more. It's up to you.
Okay, I just didn't want your little girl to...
She seems peaceful.
Okay.
Do 3 more, because I saw 3 hands go up.
Great.
Cool. Hey, how are you?
The 25th hour.
25th hour, yes.
I thought that the subtlety of those relationships were just strikingly beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful, and it was so successful in film. Talk about that a little bit. That seems so intricate and powerful.
Talk about the book or the adaptation?
The adaptation, yeah. Well, whatever you feel like, it's just so interesting.
The adaptation, I mean, as Seth said in his introduction, you know, Spike Lee's movie is very faithful to the book. But what's kind of interesting is when he read the first draft of the screenplay that I'd written, my first script wasn't as faithful to the book. I mean, it was faithful in large part, but many things were different. The ending was different. I had taken out certain crucial scenes, and I remember him. It was the first time I'd met with anyone who was considering making the movie who actually had the book. Everyone else I'd seen just had the screenplay. Most people didn't even know there was a book beforehand. And the first time I met with him, he had the book opened up on his desk. The pages were dog-eared, things were underlined. And he said, "I loved your book. Why'd you change it so much?" And so he ended up pressuring me to make it more faithful to the book than I had been. And there are certain scenes. You know, there's a scene in the book where Monty, the character played by Edward Norton, is looking into a mirror, and he has this kind of monologue with the word that I can't mention, but it's kind of the key word of the monologue. And I didn't put the scene in the script because I thought I don't see. And I remember, and Spike Lee said to me, "Why is that scene not in the script?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. It doesn't seem that cinematic to me." And he said, "Why don't you let me worry about what's cinematic and you just write it?" And it ended up being probably my favorite scene in the movie, you know. So I really owe him a lot in the sense that he put a lot of pressure on me to you know, make that script more faithful to the book, and I think he was right in a lot of ways. And again, you know, the director really, it ultimately is the director's vision that's put on screen, and he made another huge decision, which was to set it in a time right after 9/11 and to incorporate the post 9/11 story into 25th Hour, which I was a little bit hesitant about because as a New Yorker, I mean, this was right after, and this was in the months, you know, this was November of '01, and I didn't want to do anything that would be seen as exploiting the tragedy, you know, so I was very reluctant to, and he made a really strong case for why you can't tell that story in New York in this time and be honest about it if you're ignoring what happened on 9/11. And he was right, and I think it made the movie much more powerful, and that was completely him. I mean, that wasn't my input. You know, I ended up writing things after he told me what he wanted to do, but so again, you know, it's a partnership, and that partnership ended up working really well.
And was that influenced by your thoughts about friendship?
Absolutely, absolutely.
To me, it was just an incredible study of friendship, and I've just never seen anything quite like that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, there were not friendships like the ones I ever had. I mean, there were 3 very, very close friends, and it was not an experience I had, but I think it was something I always wanted to experience, that kind of closeness.
Yeah.
And didn't really get it until college, you know, or much later. That certainly didn't happen in high school. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Oh, you're so nice.
We'll do this one and then we'll go back there. Okay.
How do you feel about the business aspect of having to sell your book, do the tours, deal with the publisher, go on the interviews?
The business aspect, I mean, in the tour, actually going to a bookstore is like this type of thing is wonderful. I mean, I think it's a lot worse for the movie side of it because the movie side is a much bigger business. I mean, publishing is still kind of, weirdly enough, and you know, people might disagree with me, and I might be wrong about this, but it seems still, even to this day, to be a little bit more I don't know what the right word is. I was going to say elegant, but that's probably not it. But I mean, with the movies, it's so commercial. I mean, it's just because there's so much money involved. And in a book, you know, it's the first 2 books I wrote, or certainly the second book I wrote, a collection of short stories. There's no way that my publisher made any money off of that. So they really did it to, I don't know, to maintain goodwill with me or something else. But you know, you can't imagine a Hollywood studio ever making a decision like that, where they're gonna make a movie for and lose tons and tons of money just because we like David and you know we think this would be a good thing to do. Books of short stories almost never work. I mean, I you know, and you can ask people working here at Warwick, and there are definitely exceptions. There's a wonderful book out right now called Everything Ravaged, Everything Burned by Wells Tower, which I think is selling really well, and it's a great book, and it deserves to. But so anyway, so the commercial side of it on the publishing front, like it's so hard to sell books that I would do anything, you know, short of running naked in the street or something like really demeaning to try to get out there and tell people about the story and try to get people interested in it, because there are fewer and fewer readers every year, and so it's so hard to get your book noticed and to get your book bought, and that coming to a bookstore or going on the radio or doing something like that, like I don't mind it at all. You know, with the movies, I think there's more of the pressure is about making your story into something that's going to sell a lot of tickets, and I've never felt that for an instant in publishing. I've never had my editor ever say something like, I think we'll have a better chance selling books if this character lives at the end, or if you set it in a different time or something like that. So I don't feel the same kind of commercial pressures on the publishing, on the fiction writing side as I do with screenplays.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Who is the person that I've been ignoring in the back pocket? How are you?
So back on City of Thieves,
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know I thought that weaving the chess match into what might have been the climax of the story was just so genius. And I'm not a chess player, but I feel like I
Me
need to
neither.
learn how to play. And you must be. I mean, it was so deep.
I mean, I play chess, but I'm not good at chess. And I've actually had people who read the book challenge me to a game. And I have this rabbi who liked the book. He's like, we should play chess. I'm a real chess buff. And I'm like, I'm terrible. Kill me, rabbi. But my father is an obsessive chess player, and he's got probably 3,000 chess books. I mean, he collects chess books, and he's always so. I kind of grew up around chess, and I certainly have known the game for a long time. I just have no talent for it, you know. So I have an 8-year-old nephew who beats me regularly, which is no joke. I mean, truly. But there's a real chess game between 2 masters, and I read this long article about it because it's considered this great game, and I ended up taking some of the moves from that game and putting them into this chess match because, you know, apparently it was for real chess buffs. It would be something kind of interesting in the way they're moving the pieces, and you know, and I remember talking to my dad about it and saying, "Does this work? Will you read this over and tell me if it works?" He said, "Yeah, it works. It works." So it was kind of faking it because I'm really a pretty abysmal chess player. Thank you. And then there was was someone over here? Raise their hand? No?
Yeah, it wasn't me, but now I've forgotten. I've gotten
Okay.
into other things, but I just loved your book. But
Thank you.
there was a matter of also chance within it, and that's what struck me a little bit. And the fact that, well, my mind has gone on to other
Okay.
things, but yeah, there's a certain amount of chance. But I loved the book.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all so much for coming.
I just have to know, how many of you have not read the book yet? God, I envy you. You're in for such a treat. We're going to take a few minutes to get David set up here. He's